our guest speaker, and I don't know if Sharon is going to be contributing to this. No, she said, okay. I don't know either. Paul graduated from the University of Toronto in 1978 with majors in biology and psychology. He has numerous diplomas from George Brown College and the University of Southern California, Berkeley. He also has a certification in financial planning, a well-rounded young man. Paul worked for the City of Toronto in water supply, starting in production and treatment. He retired after 33 years while being responsible for the managing of the water distribution system. That is very complex, and I'm glad we had somebody competent in there. He has retired from running an after-school club for children 3 to 7 years old after 35 years of service. Some of the children have special needs. At other times, he teaches teenagers. He's a Bible scholar with a special interest in the Old Testament. Paul has sailed for over 50 years in many different boats. He has his advanced certification and was a CYA International Sailing Instructor. He now mentors newer sailors at the Lakeshore Yacht Club. He has upgraded his vessel from a Bavaria yacht to a C&C Landfall. He is now fine-tuning his current vessel. There is still much work to be done. In 2017, Paul helped deliver a boat from New York to Toronto. Today, Paul will share with us his experiences and observations derived on a recent trip to the south of India. Please give our guest speaker, Paul Lamont, a warm Shellback welcome.
Thank you, Diane.
That carpet is where you should be standing. Do you need the table?
Not really. I just
okay. Do we want to move the piano?
Well, I had the privilege last January to go to India, to the south part of India, and I didn't know what to expect when I got there. And it was somewhat different than I had envisioned. And today we're just going to look at some of the things that I noticed or I saw there, things that were different, things I found very, very interesting. So the topic is sailing in India, and there is a very, next slide, please. There is a very large lake. There is a very large lake in the southern part of India, down in the Kerala region. And this is it here. But it's, thank you, Jim. I forgot mine at home.
I know that it just doesn't work so well. No, it's there. No, it doesn't work on Zoom.
No, but I can, for the people who are here, they can see. But don't worry about it. Don't worry, Jim. He doesn't want me to use it. It's fine. But this lake is unique in the sense that it's a brackish lake. It is attached. It does have an opening into the Arabian Sea. About halfway out where it says Kochi, that's the area that we're going to be talking about today. So depending on what part of this lake you're on, the salinity is different. And from ocean water right down to basically fresh water in the southern part. Next slide, please. This is a close-up of the area. Right where it says Kochi, that's where it interfaces with the ocean, and we'll be looking at that a little bit later. But basically, we started down at near the bottom where it says Alapazia, and that's where our adventure begins. Next slide, please. This area is actually called the Venice of the East. The last thing I would have thought of when I was in India, that I would find the Venice of the East, and it's very much like that. And this area is a very high tourist area, and we'll be looking at that. Next slide, please. There's all kinds of different kinds of boats down there. It was a cornucopia of boats from all different sizes. We're going to look at some of these. This, I believe, was a tourist boat, but again, we're looking at a boat with an outboard engine on the side. Next slide. This is definitely a tourist boat that's in the South End. You can go out for the afternoon if you want and have a great time. And being that it's a little on the warm side there, being up on the upper level is very much preferable. Next slide. Here we are, another boat. Next. Now in the background, we see all kinds of houseboats. Houseboats is very big business in this area. There are over 3,000 of these houseboats. And as you can see, when you're looking at them, they're just piled in there. There's 3 deep, 4 deep, something like that. So when you need to get out, it's quite a challenge to get out. But luckily, we had a captain on board, so I didn't have to worry about that.
Is that the kind of boat you were on?
We were on one of those. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But we were on one of those. But the number of them is incredible. And when they're out on the water, you think of Venice and you think of the gondolas. When you go to India, you think of traffic. Even when you're out on the water, these boats do not move very fast. And there's all kinds of them out there. So you're just competing for space, even on the water. Next slide, please. Here's another boat that is, that's a private boat. Next slide. Oh, next slide. What? Yeah, okay, are we going the same direction? Okay, there, again, these are more like, this is your car. If you're in this area, this is a car that you might drive in, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Next. Now this slide gives us a bit of an idea. If you look in the center, there's a canoe, basically, but underneath that blue container, which is just cut out, is like a whippersnapper engine. It's not very high horsepower, but that engine is what propels that boat. And the interesting thing, the area is fairly, the water is very shallow throughout this whole lake. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's what they use to propel the boat. That long shaft, and next slide, I think there's a picture. Oh, go back. That long shaft pivots around on a universal hinge. So they just start the engine up, flip that around, it's in the water, just barely under the water, and you just go traveling wherever you need to go. But in the water, there's all kinds of detritus and leaves and logs and stuff like that. So as you're going along, you just push down on the engine, the propeller comes up, and as you coast over it, then you put it back down in. So you don't stop, you just keep on going. Okay, next slide. This is the slide that talks a little bit about the houseboats. Some they're between 67 and 100 feet long, beam of 13 feet to 18 feet. About 40 horsepower diesel engine. So we're not going to go fast. These boats originally were used for transporting of goods, and they've changed it over. I guess now there's better ways to go. I'm not sure considering the traffic, but they've converted them over to sail houseboat type vessels. And the roof made out of coconut leaves. And that's another name for the lake, Vembanad Lake. They carry between 50 and 200 gallons of fuel. As I said, they do not go fast. Okay, next slide, please. There's a close-up. You can see the number of boats that are there. That's just a very small example of that. But again, even there, you can see how they're just stacked in there. Next slide. Here we are. That's a nice calm day out on the lake.
So people live there permanently?
Yeah, people live there permanently, yes. But a lot of these boats are for hire. If you want to go down and stay on a houseboat. I mean, it's wintertime. I can't sail, so I got to go find a boat somewhere. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. This is where you get on your boat or on the houseboat. They're just literally lined up. You reserve them in advance. You go down the pier and find where your boat is, which they all look the same to me. Then you climb from that boat to the one that's behind it, to the one that's behind it, and that's the boat that you're going to be staying on for a period of time. We'll see a little bit later, but the problem with these boats is just the way they're designed. The captain is right at the bow of the boat. You can't see down the side of the boat. And basically, it's a communal effort that everybody else kind of helps you get out onto the lake. Next slide, please. This is just a detail of some of the sidings. They just use natural materials that are available to them when in that area. Next slide. This is another beautiful shot of some of the boats. Next slide. Again, there we a different view of all the boats that are just moored there waiting for customers. Next slide. Next slide. In the stern of the boat is where the galley is. This is the control center for the boat. So the captain has no way of getting to it. There's a second person who's the cook that's on board, and he's the one that starts the engine.
The chef.
The chef, yes. Next slide, please. Again, you can see the roofs of the different boats, and the one that's in the foreground here. It's lots of cushions and very comfortable type of a boat to go sailing on down. Like, I mean, you're not going to be bouncing around, trust me, on these boats. So it's very comfortable, and you can have unlimited viewing. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Now here, this is at nighttime. This is when we got air conditioning.
Go on.
We moored on the side of the lake there, and this was, I'm not sure if this was the captain's house or somebody's house, and they ran an extension cord from the boat to their house so that we could have air conditioning at night. Had no air conditioning during the day. Next slide. Next. See the solar panels, so they are being environmentally friendly. So that's would generate or supply something. Yes.
How hot was it when you said you see?
How hot was it?
Yeah.
The question was, how hot was it when we were there? It was probably in the 30s. And but that was the cool season, so that's why we went in January.
That was cool.
The temperature in Fahrenheit goes well over 100 in the summertime, especially in the north. The next, there's the captain. And there's two levers beside him. One is the throttle and one is the transmission. And there's a tiny wheel in the front, right at the very bow is what he's using to drive. And the response on that wheel is not really that good. It's sort of you aim the boat and go, and then you aim the boat again and go some more. And it's
So is it attached to a rudder?
Sorry?
Is that wheel attached to a rudder?
No, that wheel goes down underneath the floor there, the sole, and there's a metal axle, basically rod with universals on it going down, so that it connects to the rudder, which is in the stern of the boat. So, and there's no power steering, and I would suggest that power steering might have come in handy. Next slide, please. There again is a shot. It's a very small wheel, a very small helm there, and that's full speed ahead. Next slide. And they had an assistant captain on the boat, so I got the chance to spend a little bit of time
At the wheel.
at the wheel, yes. And just behind that, you can see there's a couch, and just behind that was the table that we ate at. So that's what's at the bow, and then as you go further aft is where the staterooms were, and then the very stern was the galley. Next slide. a nice leisurely sail down the lake. Like I said, traffic. Next slide. When we went into our stateroom, that's what we saw. That was our bed. With all the lights around it, it was quite nice, actually. Next slide. Gotta have ceiling lights. And then there's our air conditioning, the fan, for the daytime. Next. That's going into the head. There was a shower there, but in India, you don't shower like you shower here. You have a bucket and a saucepan or something like that. You put the water into the bucket and then you use the saucepan to wet yourself down and then rinse yourself off. Next slide. It did have a nice head though. There's the bucket and the bucket on top of the bucket. Next slide. These are the stairs going to the second level. Next slide. Interesting thing about India, and you'll see it in a minute, is that it's the only place I've ever been to where I could eat with my hands and I didn't get in trouble. So everywhere on the boat, or not everywhere, but there are several basins for washing your hands throughout the boat. So the idea is that you go to one of these basins and you wash your hands and then you have something to eat. There's like, this is in the hallway. This is not in your room. Next slide. That is our houseboat.
But when any of them rear wheels, any,
No,
they're all inboard,
they're all inboard diesel engines, yes. So as you can see, there's a second floor, which is not quite as big. There's a beautiful audio system up there if you choose to use it, but I didn't go to India to listen to that kind of music anyways. So you can see here, this is the bow, and basically, you can't see it in this picture, maybe another picture, there's a couple steps on the welded into the side of the bow. That's how you get on the boat. And then you go past the helm and you carry on down further. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, and you'll see, for me, it's very interesting, you'll see it in many of the shots, is that we're walking along the side of the lake. Now, there was a municipal endeavor done way back when, I could not find out when, where they actually dug out the lake to make it deeper. They dredged it. And then along the shore, it was all built up. So the lake is actually held back by all these walkways. And this is the main way you walk around in this part of India, down in Kerala. You just walk along the shore and there's that indentation there is where you can go down to wash if you need to wash yourself, if you live there, or wash your clothes, wash your vegetables, whatever. It's all done there. And let's just say the water is not really that clean. Next shot. That's the fenders. They use everything they can in India. Next slide, please. The fish market. Again, the picture that you saw us walking along the shore there, that was a fish market was in another spot, basically similar to that. We just brought the boat up to the side of the lake, to the embankment there. We got out and then we got to go to the fish market to pick out what we wanted to have for supper. Talk about fresh fish. Next slide. They had all kinds of stuff. Next. We got some crabs. Next. Next. These are just some of the shots of the different type of fish. There's all kinds of different freshwater fish there. These are not saltwater fish. These are freshwater fish. Next. There's some shrimp if you want shrimp. Next. That's the crabs, I believe. Next.
They lived in fresh water. The shrimp and the crabs lived in fresh water.
Yes. Yeah, this is all in the lake. This is we'll see the fishing a little bit later, but yeah, this is a very active fishing industry in this area. Okay, now for supper. Sorry?
Yes.
Yes, I would say so, yes. Supper. When you eat on this boat, you have a banana leaf. And all your food is on the banana leaf. And when you're finished dinner, you just roll up the banana leaf and it goes into compost.
How clever.
And of course, as I was saying, you eat with your hands. That's a bowl of curry something there. And you know, this flatbread and other things there. Okay, next slide. I think there's another, yeah, there's another shot. Next. There's our air conditioning again, and our deluxe plates. I mean, no cost is too much to set up things for you. Next slide. Next. Oh, we're back out on the lake there, but you can see it's fairly calm there because as it was. Because I mean, there's not much fetch anywhere. Next. Now this is another thing that was very peculiar. I was talking to you about the embankments that have been built up, and there's some of them were made out of rock, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Behind the lake are rice fields. And often these rice fields are lower than the lake. So there are little sections where they can control the amount of water going out into the rice fields just from the lake, which I found rather fascinating in the sense that this is all reclaimed land, because I would expect before they did the municipal work that this was all flooded, which is probably why the rice grows so very well. Next. Get another one, and then again, we've got those very simple vessels that that's your car. It's probably gone to the field to tend it for the rice. Next. There you can see a channel where the water from the lake, which is higher than the land, is being funneled into the rice fields to help the growth of the rice. And every area in India has their own type of rice, their own species of rice. Next, please. Okay, there's the shaft. I thought it was up further. That is the shaft that was at the other end of that whippersnipper motor. It's a three-bladed propeller that just gets put in the water. Basically, he has to hold whoever's piloting it has to hold the shaft at whatever level you want. But next, another shot of the same thing. It's quite long. I bet you it's 6 or plus feet long. Next. That's where we go if you want to wash your clothes, or if you want to wash yourself, or whatever. There's your bars of soap and your rock that's used for agitating your clothes when you want to wash them. Next. This is another one of the tourist boats that were available that we went out on. Next. Again, your car. Next. Next. As we were saying before, if you need something, you just pull to the side of the lake onto one of the embankments. You get off. That's Costco. You need something, you just go get off the boat, and it's right there. Next. Public transportation. As I said, this is a marine culture. So to get around, you're using boats all the time. And even the public transit is by boat. Next. There's your bus.
Mm-hmm.
Next. That's the bus stop. So basically people would walk from their houses or where they lived along those embankments until they got to a place where the bus stop was. Some of the people, like maybe a little bit more affluent, they would get into one of those canoe type vessels with the whippersnipper engine on it, and they would take that down, or the kids when they were going to school, take them down to the stop to get on, and then they would get on the boat and take them to school. And then at the end of the day, the same thing. But on the end of the day, they're coming back with bags of groceries because their refrigeration is not of high importance to them. So they're getting new food every day. Next. There's another stop. Next. That was in a less affluent area. Next. 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 Okay, that's again, that is a bus stop or a transit stop, I should say. Next. That's just further out. You can see it a little bit better, or see what area it's in. So all the people from this area would be stopping at this place to get onto a boat to go wherever they need to go. Next. There are some cars there. And that's a vessel for transporting cars from one area to another. So it's drive on, drive off kind of a system. Next. Fishing. Next. This was very interesting to me in the sense that, as I was saying, the lake is not really that deep. I'm guessing maybe 2 meters deep, maybe 3 meters deep. That's been dredged out. And these areas that you see where there's vegetation is where all the materials that they dredged were put. So they basically built islands in the lake for people to use. And these structures out here are actually fishing nets. They're massive nets that are cantilevered down into the water, and they put them down in the water. They let them sit there for a while, and then they bring them up, and the seagulls get all excited, and they catch the fish, or they bring in the fish. Next. There's lots of them. Next. There's more of a close-up. There's several of them in a row. Next. That gives you kind of an idea of the size of the nets. I hate to think how big they are. They're probably 20, 30 feet across. Next. 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 That gives you a little bit more details on the net. Next. Again, everywhere you went, there was nets. Like, this is big business. Next. Well, when you're out fishing, it's always nice to have a comfortable place to stay. So that's the hut that you stay in at nighttime while you're fishing. So you soak the net and just stay there for a couple hours before you bring up the net and hopefully have a good catch of fish in there. Next. Home sweet home. Next. There are yacht clubs in India. Oh, there is one yacht club I saw in India. Next. That is the yacht club. I think it has 3 boats. Next. That's the other boats. Those ones aren't being used. That's the boat graveyard. And it seems that they just take them over to the side of the lake and just leave them there. Next. Aqua farming of fish. Next. There is an industrial area. As I was saying, that there is a connection to the ocean from the Arabian Sea into this lake, which is brackish. And that's where it is. Don't ask me to pronounce it. Next. There's the gantry train, the cranes. On the left is where the entrance is to this lake from the ocean. Next. Next. This is more of a close-up. So right there, this section is deeper, I would expect, because it's a connection to the ocean. Next. Next. Next, please. Very interesting, like these, I'd hate to think of the amount of energy that are used to move these gantry cranes around. Those wheels are massive, absolutely massive. Next. This is a ship, ocean-going vessel that's coming in. And you can hear it coming from a long way away because they got their horns just a blowing coming in. Then they come in and then they have tugboats as we would normally expect, push them onto the shore where the gantry cranes are. Next. There's the ship coming in from the ocean. And as you can see, there's fishing nets right on either side of the opening there. Next. Next. That's the close up with the bulb on the bow, of course. Next. That's more of a commercial type boat, like for doing work. Okay, next. Another type of ship coming in. Next. Coast Guard. Gotta have a Coast Guard to keep things under control. But there's more. There's much more. Next. That is a Russian vessel. That is the vessel that goes ahead of any of their military or their naval vessels for protection. That's a gunboat, basically. Next. Here comes the Russians. That's a Russian naval vessel in the same area. Next. A little bit closer. Same boat. Next. What, are we done already? Wow, that went a lot quicker than I thought it would. Well, I'm supposed to stop at 12, so it's 2 minutes to. Yes.
Yeah. How big is the lake? Would be like Kuching or Lake Shellback?
Oh, significantly longer, bigger. I think it's something like 4.
Repeat the question.
Oh, the question is, how big is the lake that we were on? I believe it's 400 miles long, and at the widest section is 30 miles wide.
So it could be comparable to one of the Great Lakes?
No, I think it's bigger. I don't know what the size of Michigan is or Superior is, but this is a very, very long lake. That's, I guess, what would you say, from here to North Bay and back? For one length, and then the width would be.
Was this a specific trip to this area and how was it organized and how did you get contact?
Repeat the question.
The question is, why was I there? How was it organized? How did I get there? It was actually a gift from my son and his wife. My son was married during COVID, and relatives couldn't come to the wedding, which made it a lot more financially viable for him. But we had to go to India to go and meet all the relatives. So this was a gift, being that we're the parents of the groom. We had the privilege of going with them to meet all the family. And while we were there, I thought maybe we could spend some time on the water. That was my goal, was to spend the time, spend some time on the water. There was lots of times on land, and that to me wasn't nearly as interesting as this. So they organized it for us. I mean, she could speak the language, and she did an incredible job of being a tour guide, because we went a lot of different places, but we tried to spend as much time around the water as we could.
I have a couple of questions here. And it said, I just looked this up on the internet, and it said that this is the longest backwater in India. And so, did you do any research on what that backwater comprised?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't. Okay,
I tried to get some information, but I didn't spend a lot of time on the internet looking looking up stuff.
Okay, so the second question is then, did they organize this trip for you? Did your relatives?
Yes.
They did, so they recommended that particular area to
Yes.
visit? And if you don't mind my asking, how much did it cost? Or you didn't
was
know
free.
because they paid for it? Okay.
It was free to us. Well, no, we did help. Okay, we paid our own way.
Can
You know, I make the money, she spends it, so I don't know how much it was.
The flight alone.
So 2,500 for the flight, and then do you know what the trip was?
The trip was fairly reasonable because everything in India is so cheap. So like a hotel is $30 a night. So everything is quite cheap and the food is very cheap. So it was less than a trip to get there.
So here, I'm going to give you this. So just so the food was cheap, the trip getting there was your big expense.
Transportation is the most expensive. It's over $2,000 on a trip to get there. Actually, when you're there, it's very reasonable. You get a hotel, $30 a night. The food is very cheap, all fresh, lovely. So it was less than that we spent on our bed and breakfast, our Airbnbs, our hotels, our tour guides, our cars. It was all very reasonable. It was beautiful. We went up into the tea mountains to see the tea that grows there, which is incredible. If you love tea, you should definitely do that if you go to India. And we went to many other places and just to find out more of the history and go on some tours. And very, very beautiful place, very lovely people, and delicious food. They all make everything fresh for every meal. A lot of coconut in the south that they cook with. The rice patties, so each little village has its own type of rice that they use to make everything. So it's very delicious. I gained 10 pounds when I started.
Thank you, Sharon. Are there any other comments or questions that people have for Paul? Sherry?
On the size of India, where approximately was the lake? In the south or mid or north?
He showed a picture at the beginning. Can we go back, Graham, to that map at the beginning of his slideshow?
No,
Hard to do that now.
okay.
Okay.
Just tell me.
It's southwest.
Southwest area, yes.
Yeah.
Bordering the Arabian Sea. Yes.
So Paul, you mentioned that that it's a brackish lake, at least at one end.
Yes.
Is it actually kind of more like a river in effect? That is, if it's running from fresh to brackish, wouldn't it be filling at the fresh end and draining into the ocean?
That makes a lot of sense. And as you were showing the pictures, it looked to me as if it was more like a river than a lake.
Well, my perception of it was that it was more like a lake. It was shallow, but it was wide. It didn't seem to flow like a river. I don't know where the outlet was. I was not aware of an outlet. There's the tide that comes in. The tide isn't really that great. But I don't know if it just goes in and out where I showed you where the commercial vessels were or not. I'm sure that there are some springs along the way that contributes to the volume in that lake, and then maybe goes out through that passage out into the ocean. So that would make a lot of sense. I don't know 100% the answer.
I can give you a little bit of an answer there just from the little bit I read online, and that there are a number of rivers that contribute to that lake. And so I think your thoughts, Ron, are probably accurate, that it flows towards the ocean and flows into the ocean. Jim, did you have a comment?
I've gotten very interested in evolution and archaeology, and I was just wondering how old that region of India was developed. I mean, 10,000 or 20,000 years ago. I mean, do you have any feeling for that? compared like in the north with the northeast, there's all the old temples, for example.
Southern India has a lot of temples as well. I had a friend who visited there and only visited temples.
Again, if we were to use the Jewish calendar, I think your timing is way off. It's I would suggest to you that the Earth is maybe 6,000 years old. So anything above that is fantasy.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Melody.
Two quick questions. One is, how long did you actually spend on the riverboat? And then how far were you traveling each day?
Now the truth comes out. We were only on that riverboat for a few days, but we were going around different areas and we're on a lot of different boats and got to see a lot of different areas in that way. So a lot of the pictures of the canoes and kind of boats were all basically from a very short period of time that we were there. But during that time, I was able to see how they lived, what their culture was like. So we were there for, was it 2 weeks? A couple weeks, and we were probably on a boat more than half the time. But that would be various different boats.
So I take it you would recommend this as a voyage, an adventure to see another part of the world that we don't really know very much. Yes.
Yes, I think it was a very beautiful area. I mean, because this river, lake, whatever you want to call it, is fairly wide in areas. It feels like you're out on Lake Ontario, except for the waves. There is a nice breeze. Whole different cuisine, of course. Yeah, very, very different, very unique way of seeing the world. It's quite an education just being there. And yes, I would highly recommend it. The river boats are absolutely smooth, or the houseboats are absolutely smooth. One, you're not going very fast. You're probably doing 5 knots at the most. Not like some racing boats, but I guess I would be analogous to the river boats, the channel boats in Britain and other places like that, the long boats. You're not going really that far and you're not going really fast, but it's very enjoyable. But again, there's a lot of traffic that can get make one a little bit anxious, because some of the boats passing each other are very, very close, and you could share a hot dog or something if you wanted to between the boats.
Okay, well, Paul, thank you so much. It certainly has piqued my interest in perhaps doing one last long trip for me. I hope for others. I do have a little token of appreciation, but I have to get it out of my folder, but I will give it to you. So we thank you again. This, I believe, is your 3rd presentation to Shellbacks. So we do welcome your being back here. Let's give him just a nice round of applause. And coming up next week, just as a reminder, we are not going to be here next week. Or the week after. We are going to be on Zoom only. And next week, though, Tom Garner will return. And I don't know if you recall, he did research on the Welland Canal. And he's returning this time focusing on Beaver Dams and the Lost Creek on the Welland Canal. And then the following week, we will have a video. Tony Robinson and the Time Team will bring us the mystery of the Shetland Viking burial. The Time Team crew trekked to one of the outermost Shetland Islands, Fellar, in an attempt to reveal the truth behind an ancient local myth. A cliff-top mound has long been known as the Giant's Grave, but what does it can't read my, what does it hide? And could it be connected with some Viking pottery found in a nearby garden? So that should be an interesting video as well. So with that, we'll do pipes out now, but so that this will end the meeting now, but lunch will be served shortly. And you can go to the bar, I believe it's open if you feel like a drink. And food will be on the table shortly. And just a reminder that Melody Schaffer is here. She brought Whiskey Jack in, and she has opened her boat up to our purview if we wish to go and go aboard and see inside the boat. And are you on B513? Exactly. So after you eat lunch, then that would be a nice little ending to the first day of Shellbacks for the year 2024-25, and we are into our 91st year. So with that, pipes out.